So, welcome everybody to Unity on the North Shore's virtual Sunday service. I'm Reverend Kurt Condra, Senior Minister at Unity on the North Shore. Today, my message is titled, well, I'm going to change the message, so I'm not going to tell you, because that's all kind of part of how I'll be putting up a context for today. Let's see, Diane Testa is joining us as our chaplain of the day. Diane,
good morning, everyone.
And we are especially blessed to have with us today an amazing, talented musician. She's from the Kansas City area. Her name is Kelly Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Good morning, Kelly.
She serves, I think, as she also does music for Unity of Lawrence, which is just outside of Kansas City, very near Unity Village. Last night she did she's Friday nights throughout this time of sequestering. She's doing concerts on Facebook Live. So be sure and look for that later on.
Saturday.
Much of the music she'll be sharing with us. She wrote herself, singer-songwriter, so just amazingly blessed to have Kelly Hunt with us. So join me now as we open in prayer with a deep breath, with an open heart and a quiet mind. We start in gratitude. We open ourselves to a divine power and divine presence as we gratefully receive the wonderful energies of divine light and love pouring in and through us and through all things. We affirm that we're here at this time, in this place, on this morning for a divine purpose. And we trust that that purpose is now being fulfilled, for we know that we are now in the presence of pure being, immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. So we accept whatever blessing, whatever insights, whatever teachings might resonate in our hearts and minds, that we might more fully embody the perfection that we were created to express. So it is, and so we let it be. Amen.
Can you imagine joy? Can you imagine peace? Can you imagine love? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Sing it with me. Can you imagine? Can you imagine joy? Can you imagine peace? Can you imagine peace? Can you imagine love? Can you imagine love? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. One love, one heart. Oh, let's get together and feel all right. Let's do it again. One love, one heart. Oh, let's get together and feel all right. Let's sing, can you imagine? Can you imagine joy and peace? Can you imagine peace and love? Can you imagine love? Oh, love. Yes, I can. Oh, yes. Yes, I can. One love. Here we go. One love. One heart. Oh, let's get together and feel all right. Do it again. One love. Oh, one love. One heart. Let's get together and feel all right. Oh, let's get together and feel all right.
All right, Kelly, thank you. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
Just a little bit about Unity. If you're new to Unity, joining us for the first time, we want you to know that Unity is a positive, practical approach to spiritual living. We are based on the teachings of Jesus and the power of prayer. We believe that there is truth and beauty in every spiritual tradition, and so we honor the many paths to the one God. Wherever you are on your journey of faith, we welcome you. Many of us, when we first found Unity, we didn't realize that there was a community of people who believed as we did, and we really felt as though we had come home. So I hope that you have that kind of experience this morning, and that you'll be back to join us again. And even once this all virtual stuff is over, that you'll stay tuned in and maybe visit us even at Unity on the North Shore in Evanston, Illinois. So we know that our vision and our mission reflect who we are as a community and how we fulfill our spiritual purpose. So I invite you to speak aloud our vision and mission statements, because we know that by conscience, intention, and the power of spoken word, that we help to bring that into fruition in our lives and in our world. So speak it with me together, even if you're all alone. Together, centered in spirit, we co-create a world that works for all. So now our mission. Together, we are an empowering, diverse spiritual community experiencing spirit within to create a peaceful and a prosperous world. Again, if this is your first Sunday with us, we welcome you. I know we have some dear friends joining us from Unity of Oak Park, and I see some from Unity of Chicago. So thank you for being part of our Sunday morning. We also invite you to stick around after service. We will open up the microphones and give folks an opportunity to connect and to share. And it's kind of like after church, you know, how everybody just kind of, after we finish with the prayer protection, everybody just sort of erupts and there's this wonderful kind of banter of conversation. That's kind of what happens. So we'll let that unfold for a few minutes, and then we move into a time that's a little bit more structured, and we can talk about maybe some of what's going on in our personal lives, and just do a little bit more sharing, but another way that we're creating community in this virtual environment. So next up, Kelly Hunt will lead us in this morning's group song.
All right. This is a Ricky Byers song called We Let It Be. And if you know it, sing along. Oh, yeah. We let the love wash over. Again, everybody. We let the love wash over us. We let it be. We let the joy. We let the joy wash over.
Thank you, Kelly. That was really, really wonderful. Fun. Good morning, everyone. My name is Diane Testa, and I am your prayer chaplain this morning. So let us reflect together on today's daily word. And as I read, allow the words you hear spoken to become a silent and powerful meditation within you. The daily word for today is world peace. I contribute to peace in the world. When I learn of conflict in my community or in the world, my response may be frustration, sadness, or anger. If I have those feelings, I remember that I am more than merely human. I am a living expression of God, heir to all that God is. I use my divine faculties of wisdom, understanding, and love to create the abiding peace that is my birthright. Centered in divine peace, I realize that every person is as much an expression of God as I am. As differences dissolve in a way that transcends human understanding, I come to know oneness with all the world's people. I let this realization shape my response to every person in every situation. In an awareness of my oneness with all people, my thoughts, words, and actions contribute to peace in the world. The glory that you have given me, I have given them, so that they may be one as we are one. John chapter 17, verse 22. I now invite you to relax, let go, and focus on your breath. As we move more deeply into a sacred time of prayer, let's just take some deep breaths. Close your eyes if you'd like, and go into your heart space, that sacred space where you can feel the presence of the divine. God is present in and around us and our loved ones, right here and right now, and always. Let's rest in the silence in prayer for yourself and your loved ones. As we turn to God in prayer, fear has no hold on us. Worries fade into nothingness. We are reminded that God is with us now and that COVID is a sacred experience. We let go and let God guide us in this present moment. We trust in the unfolding. We trust in our abilities. And we trust in divine solutions. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. If you would like prayer support, please add your prayer to the chat box on the right of the screen, and it will become a community prayer since we can all see it.
We all have dreams that seem out of reach. We all have hard winters beyond the breach. But I'm here to tell you that deep in the ground, there are roots feeding blossoms to be found. And you're one day closer to spring, one day closer to spring, one day closer to spring, one day closer. It's time to hold up and listen hard to what the sky says among the stars. The wheel is turning us back outside, where the wind will sing our hearts open wide. And we are one day closer to spring. We are one day closer to spring, one day closer to spring, We are one day closer. When you feel like giving up and there's nothing in your cup, when you feel broken past repair, when you're held in doubt and fear, when you've been cold too long and you're sure your dream is wrong, there is growth from what seemed dead when you sense there's love ahead. A new world is coming and it's made of light. A new bird singing in the dead of night. There's music coming on bud and branch. Remember, life's giving you a second chance, and we are one day closer to spring. We are one day closer to spring. One day closer to spring. We are one day closer. And the ground begins to thaw.
Yay, Kelly!
Thank
Says,
you.
I guess this is applause in the new virtual age, right? Yay, thank you so much. We are so blessed to have you with us. Just, it's wonderful to experience you this way.
Thank you.
Let's see. So the title of my talk was Calming the Worry Monsters. And I say was because I've changed it up. That won't surprise you. I do that a lot, right? We're in the middle of a series that we're calling, get that glare right, 30 Days to Fearless Living. And this is based on a pamphlet that came out of Unity World headquarters not too long ago. And so Reverend Christine and I were sort of perusing, and the titles we came up for our talks really arose. They were inspired by some of the essays that are in this particular booklet. So just wanted to let you know that that booklet is available free from Unity on the North Shore. I think we're going to paste a link in the chat stream so you can go request that if you like to and follow along. It's really a great resource. But one of the titles of the essays that struck me was this Calming the Worry Monsters. I just thought that was a really cool title, especially given kind of the circumstances that we're in. There's plenty of fodder for us to sort of be in a place of worry. That's a kind of worrisome time in some ways. And so I thought a way to calm that would be great. The trick is, though, as I started doing a little bit of research, I found out that worry monster wasn't what I thought it was. In fact, I think I've found a slide that shows more precisely kind of what's happening with worry monsters these days. See the stuffed animals that those kids are holding? There's actually there's a book called Feeding the Hungry or the Very Hungry Worry Monsters. And so those little monsters, you'll see there's a zipper across their mouth. And so what's happening is that through this book, kids are being encouraged to write down what their worries are and then place them inside the monster, and he'll eat them up before they turn into fear, right? So I'm changing the title of my talk this morning from Calming the Worry Monsters to Feeding the Worry Monsters, because I think that's sort of a beautiful kind of metaphor for what my lesson is today, that we're really wanting to take any worrisome thoughts that are arising and find a way to resolve those that actually restore us to a place of being in grace and being in presence and being centered. So worry monster wasn't what I thought it was when I first began this talk. I thought worry monsters were something that we needed to shut down and calm, but actually worry monsters are our friends in the context of what's happening in pre-elementary education circles these days. So it's feeding the worry monsters. And I thought I would start by sharing a sort of passage or story that inspired the talk out of the book here. It's written by Ian Lawton, shares this story in his essay called Calming the Worry Monsters. There's an old monastery in Europe, high on a cliff, several thousand feet in the air. The only way to reach the monastery is to be suspended in a basket that is pulled to the top by several monks who pull and tug with all their strength. Obviously, the ride up the steep hill in this basket is terrifying. One tourist got really nervous about halfway up as he noticed the rope was old and frayed. With a trembling voice, he asked the monk who was riding with him in the basket how often they changed the rope. The monk thought for a moment and answered cheekily, "Whenever it breaks." So I had to think about that a bit, because if I were that particular tourist and that particular rope and noticed sort of the fraying, I think I'd probably be pretty worried myself. So I'll get back to that in a minute. I think I have some insight into that after working with it a bit. But first I wanted to share with you, this is another author's sort of breakdown of what the energy of worry is really about in our experience. The author's unknown, but they suggest that 40% of all worry will never happen, for anxiety is the result of a tired mind. 30% of worry is really concerns about old decisions which we cannot alter. 12% centers in criticism, mostly untrue, made by people who feel inferior. This author suggests that 10% of all our worry is related to health concerns, which worsen as we worry. They only get worse. And they suggest that 8% of worry is legitimate, showing that life does have real problems that may be met head on when we eliminate this seamless worry stuff. Of course, I always have some little change I want to tweak to those kind of things. I would think that 7%, though I wouldn't even classify that as a form of worry, but maybe as a form of legitimate concern, right? There is stuff in our world that we need to be paying attention to, that we can still have influence over and make different choices about how we're going to move forward in our lives and in our circumstances that makes a positive difference, right? The rest of it is all wasted energy. So if we go back to what's happening in that basket being schlepped up this 1,000-foot cliff and sort of precariously swinging by a fraying rope, I think what the monk's response sort of suggests is that they're halfway up. There's really not a lot that can be done at that point that's going to change the outcome, right? So the monk is sort of coming from that space of, you know what, we're here. Let's just kind of enjoy the ride. I think that cheeky presence is just a call for the tourist to sort of relax and let go of the concerns, because there's nothing they can do at that moment. Well, maybe they could pray that the rope holds. But I think even that, the prayer really ought to be about changing the attitude that we have moving up, right? To move into a space of calm and peace and awareness of presence, so that we're not so excited and tense that we're bouncing around in the basket. But it's really a call to be fully present. And I think that's the only value that worry has. If we can sort of tease out the pieces that might be worrisome, to those where we actually can make a positive impact and effect by changing choices or decisions or putting in place some activity that is going to have a positive impact, then that's sort of a legitimate expression of worrisome energies. Again, I'd call those concerns. So in the case of the monks going up in this basket, I'd suggest that maybe when they get to the top, that monk talks to the other monks and they put maybe a better maintenance plan in place than just waiting till it breaks. There is positive action that can be taken out of that, but when you're when you're hanging by that frayed rope, there's really not a lot you can do. So you might as well relax and enjoy the incredible vista that I'm sure was available to the two of them riding up together. Yeah. So as I was thinking about the biblical context that we might be able to share for what it is, what impact worry and anxiety have on our spiritual path and growth, and what impact we can have or what shifts we can make to be able to come from that space of using it as a concern so that we can make different choices. The one that comes to mind is going to be very familiar to you. And I think it has value to revisit. As I've been working with it over the past couple of days, I found some new insights that I want to share, and hopefully in the context of this time of sequestering and this time of really affirming that health and wholeness is arising, as Diane mentioned, that there is a sacredness for us to be claim out of this experience, for us to claim out of this experience of COVID, if we can sort of let the worrisome pieces go, let the worry monsters chew those up, so that we can begin to make sort of positive choices about how we invest our energies through this time. So the story that I'm going to hearken us back to is when Jesus visits Martha and Mary in the home. It's from Luke, verse 10, verses 38 through 42 is the passage we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to break that down into 3 passages as we discuss sort of the impact as we move through it. So we'll start with verse 38. Now as they went on their way, he entered a certain village. This is Jesus entering a certain village, where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. Right? So right away, I think there's some interesting insights that we can gain here. For one thing, Mary's listening, it sounds simple enough to us in modern age, but in the day that would have been a position of discipleship. That would have, sitting at Jesus' feet was reserved for men who were a part of the discipleship. For Mary to be in that role, for Mary to be listening from that kind of a perspective, was culturally and socially it would have been controversial. And yet Jesus is wide open to it, and Mary is sitting there obviously clearly in a space of being present to whatever teacher or whatever blessing Jesus has to share with her. So right off the bat, what seems to us in modern times to be a fairly kind of passive way of being is actually a very conscious choice that steps outside of social norms so that she's going to be able to be present to the gift of sort of higher consciousness and self that we know Jesus represents throughout our study of the Bible, yeah? So as we move on, the next sentence, the next verse describes Martha's reaction here. And this one I think a lot of us can relate to, especially now. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." So I have to kind of admit that I come from Martha energy an awful lot, right? That energy of sort of being overwhelmed by the tasks that there are to do, and there's an energy behind that that isn't necessarily grounded and centered in presence, right? And what's interesting to me is that Martha energy comes out of a place that's entirely positive, right? And her motive is really to create a comfortable experience and to welcome Jesus into her home. That's at least the motive that's on the surface. But I think if we look a little bit deeper, what we recognize is that Martha's sort of activity is not being driven so much by an inner awareness or an inner state of consciousness that's open and receptive to sort of higher guidance. It's coming out of expectation, maybe the same expectations that Mary, her sister, is pushing against, right? Martha has an idea about what it means to have this guest in her home and how that has to go down and what needs to be accomplished in the way before it. And I think that idea really arises more out of the expectations that are sort of put upon her from without than what's really arising out of her own divine kind of self. So it's really kind of self-serving in some ways. Martha's coming at this from a place of wanting to look good, wanting to meet the expectations that others have of her, wanting to fulfill what society expects in that moment, and she's internalized it to such a degree that it's sort of mistaken or misplaced energy, right? She's coming out of a consciousness that's really about wanting to be seen as doing well, as a gracious and good host, wanting to be seen as meeting the expectations that society and that even she has of herself. But they're not the genuine call that her spiritual nature would be asking her to answer. Yeah? So moving on. So Martha's motives are a little mixed here, right? It's not, she's got them conflated with outward expectations and outward circumstances rather than really arising from that guidance that comes from within. And I think that's what Jesus invites her back into. As we move on in the passage, the last couple of verses are this. But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, You are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. We're going to come back to that. Mary has chosen the better part, but first I want to deal a little bit with the Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted. Right? The Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted is really, often in other readings, I think in other teachings I've even done on this lesson, I've suggested that it was kind of a reprimand, kind of a trying to get Martha's attention. But in the context I'm reading it today, I'm thinking that's really more a term of endearment, right? Jesus is calling her back to her true self and just reminding her that all of the stuff that distracts her, all of the stuff that she feels is important right now, is really not. In fact, there's really only one thing that is most important, that is crucial. And I think that's the part that I think we can all relate to at this point, right? There is so much that we're being called to do. There are so many demands on our time and our attention, as even when we're sort of sequestered at home and maybe getting kind of bored with that. But at a time in history, at a crisis point in history, when we have constant access to news and headlines and statistics, it's incessant at a level that no culture, no society has ever encountered before. And that can be exhausting. It can be hugely draining. And yet it's what we're called to sort of shift out of, that incessant kind of demand on our attention. And it doesn't just stop with headlines. It's on our cell phones. It's on the screens that we're all in front of most of the time. Really can distract us from the one true thing, the one eternal thing that Jesus is inviting Mary back into, a deeper relationship or a different relationship. I can remember, as I was going back a few years, this is I was beginning my journey in Unity. I had a job with a publishing company, and I worked very closely with the production department. I was sort of the liaison between editorial and production, and there was all kinds of tension and stress in that. Editors always wanted more time to make their stories more complete, to get that one last quote. They were constantly late on their deadlines, and the production people were always sort of juggling to make sure that we could get the layout put together. It was really like a jigsaw puzzle. I've described it before as a jigsaw puzzle, except it's constantly moving. You're deciding when ads are coming in and dropping that in, and the layout of a magazine is evolving all through the process of putting it together. And I thought for many years that my job was to be able to anticipate whatever was going to go wrong, to anticipate what advertisers might be coming in and where they would want those ads placed, and how that was going to affect the editorial that's going to be around it, and what editors were working on hot stories that they're going to want some extra time and maybe even change the spacing that would need. And so I would basically have multiple layouts going on in my head, and we would be creating like multiple magazines, really, so that right up to the last minute we could shift and change. So in some ways I was setting up an expectation and keeping myself very, very busy of this kind of chaotic change. And once I found Unity and started to realize that the thoughts that I was holding in mind actually came into expression, so I was essentially creating more chaos in the terms of our production cycle by requiring our production team to put together multiple versions of a magazine that we likely, most of which we would never use. It goes back to what was it? I think that was the 40% of, 40% of what would never happen. So I would estimate that it was even more than 40% of work that was totally wasted as we were creating these backup plans that would never be used. Once I found Unity, I changed my attitude about that and just affirmed that divine order was in play, and that as things came in, we would have the capacity to be creative and responsive and be able to create a magazine that was even more sort of thoughtful and more creative. And sure enough, over the course of a couple of months, it completely changed the dynamic of that work environment. Like, the designers and the production people started to kind of enjoy their work because they could see how what they were doing had impact and was created. We weren't wasting energy. So that that busyness that we see happening in Martha's experience, I think we all sort of fall into as we start to predict what's going to happen and create other scenarios and make up stuff that's never going to be there. So it's almost like going back to the worry monster model, that as we begin to pay attention and see those arise, as we start to see where we're being distracted, and we maybe don't have to write them down and stick them inside a stuffed animal, but we certainly can sort of become more aware of them so that we can release them and not let fear sort of overtake whatever process we're moving into, so that we can embody that greater degree of presence, which I think is the one thing that Jesus is calling us to. The one thing that's most important, regardless of anything else in our experience, is that if we're present to the divine that's active in our life experience, that divine intelligence that's within us, then we can naturally respond to life and the circumstance around us in a way that actually comes out of joy and appreciation, in a way that comes out of intelligence that's higher than we can access if we're only stuck up in our human sort of thinking and believing. So Jesus is calling us to presence there. So let's go back now, in just the last verse. I want to speak a little bit to that. Jesus tells Martha that Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken from her. That's always kind of confused me. I mean, I get the better part. I get that Mary has chosen presence. She's there at Jesus' feet in his presence, sort of experiencing all that he has to share with her. I get that. But what's the part about which will not be taken away from her? As I've been working with the passage this week, I think I've got some insight into that. And it's basically this notion that as we're sort of present to what truly is in our life experience, the energy that we bring is not so much about the outcomes that we're able to create. It's not so much about even the relationships that we have, but it's about the love that gets expressed, right? It's about the intelligence and the wisdom that we bring into our consciousness. That can never be lost. Regardless of what comes after, if we're coming from a space of true presence, the qualities that get evoked for that are gifts that bless us far beyond whatever the outcome and the experience is. I heard one minister kind of speaking to it this way. He was talking about, he had young children at home, and he was noticing that, like, the 2-year-old, for that 2-year-old, like, what was most important, the answer that they had, what they had that was most significant to them in that moment, was their blanket. Right? The blanket. That was where they got their security. That was the source of how they found comfort. Right? And then he says the 7-year-old kind of made fun of the 2-year-old for being so attached to that blanket. And this father sort of reminded the 7-year-old that there was a time when she also had a blanket, but now she had Mrs. Beasley. It was this dolly that she took to bed with her. That's where she found comfort. That's what she thought the answer was. And then he had a 9-year-old or a 12-year-old who was kind of feeling a little bit superior to her siblings because she saw that it was through books, through learning, that she found a greater degree of comfort. And that progression, you know, that sort of chasing what we think is most important, that goes on throughout our life experiences. Think about it. You had the same thing happen in your own life. And then you got to high school. Maybe the thing was, oh, you know, I want to get a boyfriend. Or maybe it's, I want to win a varsity letter, or there's some achievement through high school that we thought was going to give us the kind of fulfillment that would be lasting. That was the whole of our world. And then we got to college and realized that, you know, no, it's the right connections. It's getting in the right sororities. It's the connections that we make so that we're going to get the right job when we get out of college. And then after that, we're thinking, okay, now we got the degree, now I got the job, now it's family, now it's, whether it's family of choice or whether it's family, whatever that is, now it's family. We're aspiring to family and home and the American dream. And then we get to that point and we've got the family, the kids are off at college, now we're looking at, we want to have that retirement nest egg so that we can move on and have this fabulous retirement. There's a sense of comfort and security that we're chasing after that. All of that is temporal. But beneath all of it, what we're truly seeking is that sense of comfort, that sense of safety, that sense of fulfillment and success that brings us sort of lasting joy and lasting comfort. So that's what Jesus is calling us to, out of the distractions of the goals and the objectives and the material kind of forms, to a sense that what's most important in our life is everlasting. That's the stuff that we take with us in consciousness, even beyond this physical lifetime. So I like that, because I was always kind of curious, what does he mean that what Mary has found will never be taken from her? If we're coming from that space of true presence, the gifts that we find, the joy that we experience, is a joy that continues to unfold and expand throughout our life experience. So that was helpful for me. Hope it is for you. What I'd like to do now is prepare for a time of meditation, and we'll move into a space of really being more available to that which is everlasting, really being more clear about the distinction between goals that we share that bring us kind of temporary happiness and the deeper potential that's there for us to fully embody joy and success and fulfillment that Spirit is meant for us to carry on throughout our life experience and beyond. So let's listen now as Kelly prepares our hearts and minds for a time of meditation and reflection.
There is peace, there is quiet when we touch the stillness. There is light, there is healing when we touch the stillness. May you rest, may it flow, breathing in, letting go in the stillness.
So into this wonderful energy of relaxation and being present and available to Spirit, I would invite you simply to notice your physical body. If there's anywhere that you're holding any tension or tightness, just consciously breathe into it and see if you can't release it and relax a little more fully, a little more deeply. And as your body relaxes, I invite you to just become fully present to the sounds around you. I'm sure you can hear the sound of my voice and Kelly's lovely music, but listen a little more deeply and closely. There are birds singing outside the window. Maybe there's some appliance humming. But our intention here is to become fully present to everything that's available to our sense experience in this moment. And as you notice the sounds around you, I invite you to move a little bit more deeply. And listen to that still small voice within. For you, maybe it's a voice, but maybe it's just a feeling or a sensation, some kind of intuitive sense. But move into that space where you make yourself fully available to the presence of the divine. There's nothing you need to do in order to allow that presence to make itself known to you. Nothing you have to change. need only allow. Because in truth, you are one with that one great presence and power that is the source of all light and love, that is the source of all good. And when we simply allow ourselves to fully experience that presence, that power, we actually move into a space where we express it. Where without effort or striving, we have access to the Most High, to divine intelligence, to infinite wisdom, to abundance and joy and prosperity. So however it is that those divine qualities are being revealed to you in this moment of being available to presence, I invite you to now just sit quietly and let Spirit express it through you, in you, and as you, in whatever way is most available in this moment, in this time, in your mind and heart, in the quiet. Now, as the music gently brings us back to an awareness of the sounds and the sights around us, I invite you to come back fully present into this moment, this wonderful virtual experience, and to know that beyond a doubt, you are the presence of power of God in expression. Thank you, God, for that awareness. Thank you, God, for the strength and faith that we glean from this experience to move out into our lives with a sense of joy, prosperity, and peace. So it is, so we let it be.
May you rest. May it flow. Breathing in and letting go. There is peace. There is quiet when we touch the stillness.
Thank you, Kelly. That was so beautiful. And that's one of the songs that you wrote especially for Paulette Pipe. We have many fans of Paulette Pipe in our community, so Touching Stillness is her ministry. Just a heads up to the production team, I'm switching things up. Don't be surprised. We weren't going to do a ritual. Reverend Christina is taking some time to restore and renew, so we weren't going to do a ritual, but I've thought of one, so I'm going to suggest one to you. As we're talking about presence, I would invite you to move through this week and be very aware of what environments you can create for yourself that put yourself in the presence, right? For me, for instance, I found that it's really heart-opening and mind-quieting to go spend time on the lakeshore, especially these beautiful sunny days. As I spend time by the water, my soul just opens up. I also really enjoy being out on a bike. The streets are almost empty, so there's not the traffic concerns that would usually be there, and there's just a sense of freedom and connection that I feel in that way. Another one for me that always happens, it's more water, but I really like baths. I like to take long, really hot baths and just turn all the lights off, and I'm just sort of in this dark place. All of those, I think, help me sort of move out of spaces where distractions happen and just be more fully present. So I'd invite you this week to just be really clear about where it is that you can make yourself available to presence, and maybe make some time to set aside some additional time to allow that in this period. And as an extra homework assignment, if it lends itself to a visual, maybe take a photograph of whatever it is that whatever circumstance, environment you create for yourself that brings you into a space of being present, and post that on our Facebook page, in our Facebook group, or join our Facebook group and post it there, so that we can share sort of maybe some new ideas about how we can stay fully present to the divine in this time when there is so much that can distract us and cause kind of worrisome, anxious feelings. So your assignment this week in terms of practical application and ritual is really be clear about how you move into a space of being available to presence. And for extra credit, you can post a picture of whatever that is on our website, or not on the website, I'm sorry, on our Facebook page. Yes? All right. Which brings us to the time in our service when we invite you to share in our activity of giving and receiving. In Unity, we know and recognize that in order to be a part of the flow of good, that we have to be actively participating at. We give and receive so that we can continue to experience the good that happens in our lives. And please know that there is much uncertainty in this time, and I know that some folks, I don't know what's happened to my focus there, and I know that finances for some are challenging. But what I would suggest is that as you are able to please give and give generously, and by that I'm not meaning any specific amount. What I'm meaning is giving with a sense of openness in your heart, giving with a sense of assurance that truly it's an abundant universe and you are part of that flow, whatever the amount is. And in this time of sequestering, we've tried to make giving to Unity on the North Shore as easy as possible. You can give either through texting on your phone. There's a number you can dial. And Clay, you're going to have to help me. I better get back here on my script so I make sure I've got these in the right order. Oh, good. Okay. So in order to text to give to Unity on the North Shore, type the word give to 815-827-6052. The first time you do this, you will be setting up some account information, but the next time around, then it's very easy. You just type in an amount. So the first time there's a little bit of setup. You'll need a credit card number, but after that, it's very easy. You can also give to Unity on the North Shore on our website. There's a donate button. So go to unityns.org and click on the donate button, or you can give through U.S. mail, of course. There's our mailing address on the screen, 3434 Central Street, Evanston, Illinois. And just know that the way in which we as a spiritual community move through this as an organization is entirely supported by the donations that you're giving. We are not able to receive any revenue from renting our space out at this point. So other sources of revenue just aren't available. And know that those of you joining us from other spiritual communities, Unity Oak Park or Unity Chicago, the same is true for your home churches. So please, as you're able, give with that same sense of openness and confidence and faith to support your home church and your spiritual community as well. So let's now move into our offertory blessing. And again, I invite you to move into this with a space and speak it aloud, because we hope it bring into expression, but with a space of gratitude and of generosity as you speak these words together. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive.
Each other up. Oh yeah, one heart at a time we lift each other up. One day at a time we lift each other up. Oh yes we do. One day at a time we lift each other up. step at a time, we lift each other up. Just takes now one step at a time, we lift each other up. Up and into the dream of how we really want to live. Let's go up and into the world of our own creation. Come on, lift each other up, one vision at a time, we lift each other up. Just one vision at a time, you know we lift each other up. It just takes one heart at a time to lift each other up. Oh yeah, that's right. Takes one thought at a time to lift each other up. And let's go up and into the dream of how we really want to live. Come on, let's go up and into the world of our own creation. Come on, lift each other up, one heart at a time. It's one day at a time. Yes, just one step at a time. It's one heart at a time. Let's go one. Let's do that 2 times. Let's go one, one. Let's do it 3 times, y'all. 1, 1, 1, 4 times. Here we go. 1, 1, 1, 1. All right. Woo!
That was rocking. Thank you so much, so very much, Kelly, for this beautiful music that you shared with us this morning. I know we're all so grateful. The access to your music is put into the chat box, so I hope everybody goes to kellyhunt.com. She has some free downloads, as well as some of the music that you've heard today is actually going to be released very soon. Isn't that right, Kelly?
That's right.
So we're so excited for you, but do go and you can get some of her older music, as well as get ready for that new great music that's being released. So we hope that you will check out our YouTube channel. If you have not been at the Unity North Shore YouTube channel, we've got all of our Sundays posted on there. By the way, Andy says hi. That's just how he rolls. So please do go to the YouTube channel. Sundays are posted, other cool videos are posted there, so check us out there, as well as following us on Facebook and Instagram. We have accounts in both places. We'd love it if you post your pictures of things that you're doing onto both of those sites so we can share with you. And then lastly, as Rev Kurt was talking about, we have a fantastic dedicated Unity North Shore Facebook group that's really just like garden chat in black and white. We can talk with each other. You can share videos if you want, pictures. We have great conversations on that Facebook group, so we invite you to join us there. And now I'm going to change hats and go into youth ministry. We are having a rockin' time on Sunday mornings. We meet at 9:15 a.m. in a different Zoom meeting. And today, our grades, kindergarten through 8th grade, were wrapping up their lessons on love with a beautiful lesson called Loving Others. And we know sometimes as we're in close quarters, it can get a little bit hard to love others sometimes. But we discovered that when we choose love, we can overcome any bad feelings that we may be having. And then in YOU, Evan shared a beautiful lesson today on happiness. So Evan, thank you for being a leader in class today. And I think that's it. Is that it, Andy? That's it. Okay. Love to everyone. Let's bless these beautiful children and teens by saying together, children and teens, we love you. We bless you. We appreciate you. We behold the Christ as you, and we see you doing great things. And so it is.
Thank you, Kate. Oh, thank you for all you do around our youth ministry stuff. That is just such a beautiful ministry, and I understand we've got some youth from other Unity churches in the area joining us now. So what a blessing for you and the teachers that are creating that experience for them. Appreciate you. Thanks to everyone for joining us. I don't know what, I think we hit like 80, well, 84 now, somewhere around there, right around, I'm going to call it 100. Also, please know that you can request prayer support online, and as long as we're still on here, you can still do it in the chat stream. If there's a prayer request you're holding on your heart, put it in the chat stream. We'll make sure our prayer team gets that this week, and they will be enfolding you in prayer. Otherwise, you can request prayer support on our website online. There it is, unityns.org, and there's a pray tab at the top. Just click on that, and an email box will come up, and we will be able to support you in that way. You can also call our prayer line. I don't have the number here, but it's on a slide. There it is, 847-328-6123. There's a wonderful recorded prayer there for you, and if you leave a message, we'll make sure that our prayer team also gets that request and holds it in prayer. Incidentally, our prayer team enfolds those prayers for 30 days, and at the beginning of the month, they send it on to Silent Unity for another 30 days. And you can also call Silent Unity for sort of one-on-one telephone prayer support at 1-800-NOW-PRAY. There's that line. All right, so let's see. Join us next week. Daniel Nahmod will be here. I mentioned at the top of the service that this booklet, 30 Days of Fearless Living, is based on essays. One of the essays is actually Daniel Nahmod's, so we've asked him to speak to that and sing next week. So he will be our guest presenter and guest musician next week. It'll be great fun. And let's see, the last thing is that don't forget Garden Chat is coming up. So as soon as we finish, Diane will finish us off with the prayer of protection, then we'll open up the microphones and have an opportunity to chat back and forth with one another. So again, Kelly, thank you. So wonderful to have you with us. I hope we get to do it again.
Me too.
Okay.
All right. Are we ready for the peace song?
Yep, take us out.
All right. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, united all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every breath I take, let this be my joyous vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me.
Join me now in speaking the words of our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is. I am divine. Thank you so much. Join us for Garden Chat. Just stay on the line. Have a beautiful day.